Hey, welcome to this week's review. In this chapter, we're setting up the internet around the world. And also at the end, they talk about that the next thing they'll do is decide who's going to the moon. So we will definitely be talking about that later. But let me start with something maybe I'm a little confused about. It seems that Chrome is not actually designing the rocket. I guess I was just hoping that Chrome would have a bigger part in this invention than it seems he's going to have. But to be honest, I'm surprised Senku is even accepting this return trip plan. He says that they can't waste time, can't risk another attack, but he also knows that it's less likely to go well if not everyone is on board with the plan. So in that sense, I guess he has no choice. Maybe he wants Chrome to go, and that's why he's not arguing. The only way to speed it up is to revive and recruit more experts, and it's about time. Who are we getting help from? Some rocket engineers. Where would they mostly be located? Well, NASA, of course. You'll also find them as professors at MIT and other institutes of technology, like in California, Georgia, at Stanford, and then at some companies also. And of course, Zeno would know some engineers too. So they're using this tochu tree to make the rubber for the cables, the internet cables. So this tochu tree is called a euphorbium tree or a hardy rubber tree. It's native to China, has a big reputation for good health benefits. And these guys went to Hiroshima to find it. Yes, it was brought over from China to Hiroshima because of its health benefits. In Japan, they ended up using it as a source of rubber when other methods were not so feasible. Now you can still get it as a popular tea. So the elastomer is found in the leaves, in the bark, and it's considered a more durable and more elastic type of rubber. So they're making these cables with several layers inside. The main difference between these cables and ones we use today is on the inside. Here they have copper wire, but today we use fiber optic. Fiber optic just has more clarity and lets the signal go through a lot easier. And now we have yet another ship. This is the cable laying ship. We have ships today, their only job is to lay or repair cable. A couple of things I noticed here is that there are these floats that go along the cable. I'm not sure what their purpose is, except to make the cable lay a little more evenly when it hits the sea floor, because it does disconnect from them. Maybe it just makes things a little more gentle on the cable as it's being laid down. But anyway, another thing is here they have a relay point at Hawaii. If what they mean by relay point is it's like a repeater point, they have one repeater in the whole length of the cable, it's probably not enough. Right now we have a repeater anywhere between every 70 kilometers to every 400 kilometers. And these just amplify and push the signal so that it can reach the whole way. So we have cables going between all of our established cities, but then we have one that's going to Korea and from Korea to China. So do they have people revived there, or is that just to prepare for the future? I don't know. We'll see if it comes up again later. Also, Zeno's got some branding on the TVs there. Looks a lot like the General Electric logo, except it's Zeno Electric. I can only think of one other time he has actually put his branding, was on Stan's gun. So once we have the internet, it's used to have an online meeting. You might consider this a remote work reference. There was another remote work reference when they escaped on the motorcycles. So this must be a person from each of our cities on each screen. So they can send video across the world, but they also need to design the parts for the rocket. So this e-paper, as Senku calls it, is a technology called a storage tube. It was one of the first computer systems used for designing and engineering. And these are drawings sent from a computer, but it's the same technology basically. So it would look something like this. So imagine if Boichi sent in his drawings on something like this. He does have a tablet that lets him draw on the screen, but it's totally different. The pen for his tablet does work on electric signals, but that's the only similarity. And he's mentioned before he had to switch to using this full time instead of his pen drawings or his brush drawings because he had to change to remote work. So it's definitely time to pick the crew for the moon mission. How will they choose? There must be some deciding factors, like what do they expect to happen or expect for them to need on the moon. They could just draw cards again, like for the hot air balloon ride, but I guess it's a little more important than that. By the way, the balloon was another vessel that carried 3 people who were selected. Senku, because he knew how it worked, Ryusui for his weather knowledge, and then the Chrome went basically because he showed up and was determined to not miss out on another invention. Then he ended up helping save them in the storm. As for the moon mission team, the last time anything was said about who was going to go before this chapter was not too long ago. These 3 were portrayed as the 3 to go and never said that they were going to be the ones. To me, it kind of makes sense that these will be the 3, but I guess we'll have to see. Would it be weird if it turned out that way? It was actually those 3. So before this, the last time anyone said anything about the moon mission crew was quite a while ago, when Tsukasa was revived from the freezer, and we'll talk about that moment a little bit later. Also, recently, Chrome kind of speculated a little bit before deciding to work on a round-trip rocket, speculating that Ryusui would be the obvious pilot, the warrior would be Tsukasa or Hyoga, and didn't say who he thought the scientist would be, but yeah, that's pretty much the only time it's been mentioned. So let's talk about our candidates for the pilot. Why is Ryusui such a shoo-in? Well, so far, he has been the captain of the first ship to sail across the Pacific in the Stone World. That's what he's best known for, that and the dogfight in America. But he's also gotten a hot air balloon out of the storm on its first trip, and he drove Zeno's ship to escape Corn City. He was also a race car driver at a young age. His captain's instincts allow him to make decisions quickly, like when Stan shot at the mobile lab and Ryusui acted quickly. And his instincts allow him to assess the situation, his surroundings. Like when he was first revived, he predicted the rain using all kinds of factors that he was able to pick up on. So any reasons against Ryusui being in the capsule? The way that Inagaki likes to turn things around, something could happen that makes that Ryusui can't go. It's interesting that they're kind of giving away the answer to one of these seats, saying it's obvious that it's Ryusui, but maybe it is obvious. But maybe it's to build up a failure for him. Is there anyone else who could be the pilot? Well, there is Charlotte. Ryusui acknowledges her skill as a better pilot than him, but we don't know her history beyond that. But if there's something Ryusui can't do as a pilot, well, maybe she can. Okay, candidates for warrior. First would be Tsukasa. When Tsukasa was revived from the freezer, they said that the reason they revived him was for him to be the warrior when they go to the moon. It was even the topic of their last conversation he had with Senku before being frozen. Maybe Senku's way of saying, don't you die on me because I need you. And so when Tsukasa is revived, Senku says, yeah, you're right. That's why I revived you. But, Senku's goals are always at the front of his mind. Everybody knows that. So, of course, that's what he says. Both before and after Tsukasa being frozen, there seems to be some sentiment being covered up. And even Ginro points it out here. So it's hard to tell how serious he was about it back then. That was the last time it was mentioned. A long time has passed. A lot of things have happened since then. I would still expect Tsukasa to have a role next chapter. It would be really weird if he didn't. Our next candidate for warrior is Hyoga. According to Kohaku, and according to this ranking from an extra in the manga, Hyoga is on par with Tsukasa. When Chrome starts naming names, Hyoga is one of those names. Is there any reason to choose him over Tsukasa though? Tsukasa seems to have more all-around skills, including some intellect, while Hyoga depends more on his spear technique. Our next candidate is Kohaku. Zeno mentioned her being useful in space with her eyesight. That's a textbook example of foreshadowing. She'll probably end up in space, I don't know how or when, but would they opt for her instead of Tsukasa because she's got strength and good eyesight, not to mention her speed, and she's the lead heroine, and Boichi also simps for her? She's got a lot of reasons to be chosen, I'm just saying. However, any villager will have disadvantage of not being familiar with modern technology. With her lack of science knowledge, huge lack of science knowledge, she may be easily caught off guard, not know what to expect in whatever kind of situation ends up there. Remember, these are the kinds of people who are thrilled by ramen made from birdseed and bread that's turned into charcoal. There's still so much villagers don't know, which makes them vulnerable to being tricked by Y-Man. So I would say Kohaku has a full spectrum of pros and cons. We still have plenty more candidates for warrior. Next would be Stanley, maybe just wishful thinking, but you know, it would have been nice to see Stanley and Tsukasa work together at some point in the story. They are both unstoppable forces, but they probably can't both go. Stan has more military experience, which may be more useful. However, with hints that Y-Man might not totally be an enemy, I would be worried about a not so diplomatic approach from him. Another possibility would be Ukyo. His archery skills would be a little useless mostly, but his ears would be able to pick up anything weird in the radio signals, like when he said the voice was synthetic. But I just want to say, if he goes, imagine the fire in the eyes of the Ukyo trader theorists. It would be worth it for that alone. Not really, I'm already over it. How about Taiju? He could easily tolerate any harsh conditions, attacks, but as the sole warrior, he wouldn't really be doing any attacks himself. And maybe you might call it an honorable mention, Nikki. Not really a warrior, but she's got those diplomatic skills. She could put Y-Man in his place like she did Brody, but really, if a political agreement ends up happening with Y-Man, I would have full faith in her more than anyone else. Okay, that's all for the warriors. How about who's gonna be the scientist? Of course, our first candidate is Senku. The fact that he's the MC weighs a lot in his favor to be the scientist on the trip, and he would be achieving his childhood dream to go to space, not to mention following in his father's footsteps to become an astronaut. However, it's been made clear that he is too weak. Another reason he would go is his quick thinking, resourcefulness, and his intellect, which is on par with Zeno, another candidate for the scientist seat. He's been shown to be a bit scrawny, but not overly weak, that we can tell so far. They apparently trust him since Tsukasa didn't come with him from South America with the rocket engine. It would be pretty exciting to see how he interacts with Y-Man, I think. And our other important candidate is Chrome. He seems to be getting built up for this. He's been learning a lot, and now is probably equipped with some real math skills. I would guess he has better physical ability than Zeno. If they have no idea what to expect when they get on the moon, his creative problem-solving skills would really come in handy. Okay, and I have to mention Suika and Chelsea. Very unlikely, but they are our other two scientists. Too bad Suika can't fit inside a watermelon anymore. That would be so cute to see her slowly bouncing around on the moon. Chelsea would probably be able to navigate the moon's surface better than anyone, but as far as defeating Y-Man, I'm not sure she could do much. So other things to consider: the possibility of more than 3 people going, maybe a second crew, a backup crew, rescue crew. There's some possible scenarios that would involve a bigger crew. And you know, this series has some strange reasoning sometimes, so the team members might not be who you'd expect. So then here are some other possible combinations and how those might pan out if they were chosen as the moon crew for some reason. Yuzuriha, Joel, and Minami. They're the 2 girls who have interacted with him the most in America. So Minami tries to interview him, but he's so embarrassed being packed in the capsule with these 2 girls, he can't even talk. But then when they get there, Joel has an attitude with Y-Man about the Medusa, talking some smack like, I turned that little trinket into a toaster, like it ain't even nothing. And then when they leave, Yuzuriha will leave behind some dolls that she made. Another possibility, Ruri, Luna, and Ginro. Ginro is very happy to be sandwiched between the girls, so much that he's distracted and messes up the lunar landing because for some reason he's the warrior and the pilot. He panics and Luna is trying to direct him back on course, but then she gets the directions mixed up, like my right or your right. And then Ruri is like, oh, this is like that one tale about a bird that went to the moon and met an evil man, and the only way to defeat the man was to get him off the moon. And everyone's like, why didn't you say that sooner? How about this trio? Chelsea, Gen, and Chalk and Cigar. They count as one since they're so small. So Gen pretends to be defecting like he did in America, asked to join Y-Man. But then Chelsea loses her glasses and wanders off. Y-Man catches on again, petrifies them, but Chalk and Cigar aren't petrified, and so they start throwing rocks. And then Ray shows up and morphs into a super suit that Chalk and Cigar can ride in, and Y-Man is defeated by a dog and a pig wearing a self-aware cell phone. See? It could be anything. Okay, I guess that's enough nonsense for today. About the next chapter, clearly it will have an astronaut selection. I would assume a reunion with Tsukasa and maybe others. Something about astronaut training. Do you think part of it will be the clothed swimming test, like Byakuya failed? Will Yuzuriha help to make the spacesuits? Seems like she would. So questions for you. I know that I've asked you before about who's going to go on the moon mission, but how do you think they're going to choose the team members? How are they going to decide? Maybe they'll actually say something about what they expect to happen on the moon. But I'm excited to find out who they will be, and we'll see you next time for that. Bye-bye.